Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, October 16th. A lot going on this morning, a lot to talk about. We have a soaking rain event coming to the Mid-Atlantic region, something we haven't seen much of at all over the past several weeks. Looks like there'll be increasing amounts of rainfall as one moves up along the I-95 corridor. D.C., for example, could end up with a half to 1 inches of rain out of this particular system. Philly, 1 to 1.5 inches, may be a bit conservative. New York City, Boston, probably 2+ inches of rain out of this developing coastal storm. Here's the latest radar, and we have basically a wall of water headed towards the I-95 corridor region from D.C. to New York City all the way up to Boston over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Just on the doorstep of D.C., it looks like it'll start raining there during the morning hours, midday in the Philadelphia metro region, then late afternoon in New York City. And again, the rain will quickly become heavy at times, can be an afternoon thunderstorm in some sections, all from this developing coastal storm. The winds will become much more noticeable tonight and especially during the day on Thursday, when this storm really intensifies and slides up along the New England coastline. Ultimately, enough cold air could wrap in to see some snowfall, even some accumulating snow up across the higher elevations of northern New York State and northern New England. Winds in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston could easily gust past 40 miles per hour on Thursday on the backside of this coastal storm. Well, this is the total forecast map in terms of precipitation amounts for this upcoming coastal storm from NOAA. We actually showed this a couple days ago, and I agree with the sentiment here that increasing amounts as one moves up along the I-95 corridor. Again, maybe a ½ inch to 1 inch in D.C., 1 to 1.5 inches in Philly, and then 2+ inches in the New York City to Boston area. And ultimately, there could be some snowfall, let's say, in the higher elevations of this region right here, as this storm wraps in some colder air in the latter stages. We're talking mainly during the day on Thursday up across northern New England and northern New York State as well. But a soaking rain event coming to the Mid-Atlantic region, certainly to the northeastern part of the nation, something we haven't seen much at all of in the past several weeks. Well, let's take a look at last night's 6E GFS model run. These maps, by the way, from tropicaltidbits.com. Talked about the negatively tilted orientation to this trough axis as this upper level low swings across the Great Lakes into the northeast U.S. That certainly sets off some very strong upward motion in the atmosphere, and that in turn will result in this intensifying and strong coastal storm. Let's move forward here. The beginning of the day today on Wednesday, the upper level low situated over the Great Lakes, basically a neutral trough axis orientation as of the beginning of the day here on Wednesday. But watch what happens as we move forward. And there you go, a nice negatively tilted, what we call negatively tilted trough axis. That's basically the trough axis that extends from the center of the upper level low in any direction, in this case from the northwest to the southeast. And in this particular quadrant right here, that when you have a negatively tilted trough axis approaching that quadrant, strong upward motion. And again, this is the area of interest in terms of the intensification for this coastal storm. It'll move into this area, and once that trough axis goes negative, it'll intensify rapidly, and all that in turn will result in significant rainfall, strong winds, and ultimately wrapping around of some colder air up across northern New England, northern New York State. It could even change to accumulating snow before the whole thing winds down. Let's move forward here into the overnight hours, and here we go by Thursday morning. At this time, some colder air will wrap in those higher elevation regions. Rainfall will be pretty much over with by morning in New York City, Philadelphia, D.C. In fact, it ends early tonight in most of those areas between D.C. and Philadelphia, maybe later on tonight in New York City. But the big story on Thursday, on the backside of this powerful storm, will be the strong wind gusts out of the northwest, 40 miles per hour or so, certainly on the table. and it'll actually be one of the coolest days we've had so far. Afternoon temperatures mainly confined to the 50s in the Mid-Atlantic region, even in the big cities of the I-95 corridor region. Well, let's take a look at the surface forecast maps from the 6E GFS model run. Not much going on right now in D.C. or Philadelphia or New York City. Again, it looks like the rain moves into D.C. in the morning, midday Philadelphia, later in the afternoon across New York City. Let's move forward here. Upper level low has a surface low associated with it as well over the Great Lakes, and even some cold enough air here across southeastern Canada for some snowfall, indicated here by the blue. Heavier rain develops soon after the rain begins in most of these areas along the I-95 corridor region. By tonight we have intensification of a coastal low right along the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Some heavy rainfall, especially in northern Maryland, north and east at that particular time. Again, increasing rainfall amounts as one moves northeast along the I-95 corridor region. And the precipitation winds down pretty quickly in D.C. early tonight, maybe in the evening hours in Philadelphia, and then later on tonight in New York City. But look at this isobar pattern here as we move into the overnight hours and even into the day on Thursday. Very deep low here, centered over northern New England, 973 millibar low. And all these black lines represent lines of equal pressure, the isobars. The tighter they are, the stronger the winds. And this will lead to at least 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts on Thursday in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and ultimately in Boston as well. Again, the storm may be past in terms of precipitation by tomorrow morning, but the winds will remain a big factor on Thursday, and quite a cool air mass as well. Let's move forward here into the afternoon and evening hours. Again, possibility of some snowfall, some of those higher elevation areas of upper New York State, northern New England. Still windy tomorrow night, and actually the winds stay quite strong into the early part of Friday. Mostly sunny skies, but still cool, still quite breezy during the day on Friday. Well, let's wrap up by looking at the 850 temperature anomalies going forward here. It's a very interesting weather pattern setting up here. We definitely have some significant cold shots coming across the nation into the northeastern part of the country over the next couple of weeks. By the end of next week, there looks like a very impressive cold shot coming across the northern plains, south central part of Canada, across the Great Lakes into the northeastern part of the country. Even some signs that there could be some snow associated with that, early season snow in at least parts of the Mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. Here we are beginning the day on Wednesday, a little bit above normal as we begin the day here, at least a couple thousand feet up from the ground level. This is 850 millibar temperature anomaly. So let's move forward here. On the backside of that coastal storm, colder than normal air pushes in tonight and during the day on Thursday. Again, tomorrow, one of the coolest days we've experienced so far, with most areas holding in the 50s for highs. You throw in 40-mile-per-hour winds, it'll feel much cooler than that as well. Then we move forward here. It stays quite cool and even quite breezy on Friday. Then we start to warm up a little bit, but let's move forward here through next week. Have a warm-up here by the early part of next week, but already some colder than normal air developing over the middle part of the nation, and that moves into the region maybe midweek next week, but that's not the real impressive cold shot. The real impressive cold shot that's starting to show increasing signs for late next week. And here we are now, a week from tomorrow. We're talking about Thursday of next week, October 24th time period. Very chilly air for this time of the year, moving across the central U.S., and that looks like that can't be stopped. And it looks like it arrives into the eastern states towards the end of next week. Kind of a secondary push following that. So again, there's some very interesting signs for a very chilly air mass for this time of the year. Late next week, the following weekend, even the threat for snow in at least parts of the Mid-Atlantic region or northeast U.S. We're talking the end of next week, the following weekend, near the end of the month of October. But for the next 12 to 24 hours or so, a powerful coastal storm will develop along the Mid-Atlantic coastline, move up along the New England coastline, first soaking rain event for much of the urban corridor from D.C. to Philadelphia, New York City, Boston in several weeks. Increasing rainfall amounts up along the coastline as one moves to the northeast. Strong winds, especially late tonight and on Thursday, to follow the storm. 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts during the day on Thursday. That's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.